Welcome to the Real People, Real Business Show, where we are talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their business and is here to share their experiences, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you can be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Our guest today is amazing. She is a friend. She is a peer. She is a colleague, and I have known her for a long time. I've even met her in person, and she is here to share some awesome stories with you. So without further ado, I want to welcome Lynne Somerman. Lynne is a financial coach who works with business owners that are in growth mode and that are looking to become more financially literate and finally get control over their money. So welcome to the show, Lynne, and thanks so much for taking the time to share your story today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, let's jump in. As with everyone, I want to know your story. Tell me how you got to where you are right now. What was that big moment that moved you from an employee to a business owner?
I don't know that there was a particular moment. I think my business grew really organically, and I feel really fortunate that I feel sort of, in a lot of ways, I felt like my clients sort of pushed me into this, in that I was doing coaching with people in an informal way for a long time. I had people that I knew just sort of knew my own story of having overcome financial struggle and having had to figure a bunch of stuff out that we don't really teach people, and we make it weird to talk about. So I had to learn sort of the hard way how to get through that. And so people I knew had been asking me for help, and they started telling other people and so on and so forth. And eventually it was strangers, and someone said, well, how much do you charge? And I was like, I don't charge money for this. And they were like, you should. And you do now. So that was a number of years ago. And then when I took the jump to do it full time, I think my business had just been sort of slowly growing, again, really organically. And I feel so fortunate that is how that happened. And then when my daughter was about 6 months old, no, when she was about 9 months old, I went back to work full time. I'd been working part time after maternity leave. And when I went back to work full time, I was like, this is not for me anymore. And so I figured out pretty quickly how to make a change to make this my full time gig. And that was a couple of years ago. So.
And how are you working with your clients now?
So my work with clients right now is primarily one-on-one. And I do all my work via Zoom. So I have clients all over the world. I have a client who's in the same small town in Maine as me. And she was like, so what are we going to meet once a week, like therapy? And I was like, God, no, I don't want to wear pants. Like, I was like, we're going to meet on the internet like real adults do. And I was like, you can stay home, I'll stay home, and we'll both do that. So I work with people primarily one-on-one. I work with a lot of business owners on both their personal or business finance. And it ranges the, gamut from like skill building. People ask me a lot of questions that they feel like, are too dumb to ask other people, to also things just like, how do I increase the profitability of my business? How do I figure out how to make a plan for my business's future when I don't know how much I'm going to bring in? Also things like, I'm self-employed and my partner isn't, and we fight about money all the time. And I'm not sure how to talk to them about this, or just navigating sort of all of, how do I make a budget for my personal life when I don't know how much money I'm going to make? All of those sorts of things. And I am moving into doing some small group coaching programs. I teach some online workshops, and I do public speaking engagements too, to sort of get the word out to more people.
So the thing about your business is that it's actually really emotional, right? So
super emotional. Yeah.
Yeah, you are kind of characterized, or you characterize money as spreadsheets and budgets and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really dig into the work that you're doing with your clients, this is a really very personal thing, right? Because we have crazy stories about money, and it's amazing how much that sort of gets passed down to us. So can you talk a little bit about how you're kind of bridging that gap between the really tactical side of money and the very emotional side of it?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important part, that people often come to me because they've identified a problem that shows up in their money. But oftentimes the problem is not actually a result of their money. Sometimes it is, but sometimes, sometimes it's like, I don't know enough about this thing related to money. But when we sort of peel things back, there's a different sort of thing going on. There's some fear or some shame. There's just other stuff going on. I recently read a description of what a financial coach is that rung really true with me. And I sort of summarized it as, I make everybody cry and I make everybody budget. So to me, it's a really, I think that emotional thing is really there. So money, like the tactical things are really where we begin. So, when I start working with people, I ask them to tell me just about what their financial situation is. And very quickly, they start talking about a lot of things that are not strictly financial. So they talk about how they just got divorced, or how their parents dealt with money, or their grandparents dealt with money, that sort of thing. I have a client recently who I asked him about a meeting that he had had with an accountant recently. And within 5 minutes, he was crying and talking about his situation in high school that was leading to just a general feeling of sort of not knowing what he was doing, not being a good adult, and not feeling like he was worthy of sort of being the successful business owner that he was, if that makes sense. And really that question came because of, how did that meeting with your accountant go? And it was just sort of, it just tied into something. It sort of like, it just triggered something. And I think that happens very commonly with people's money. And I have people all the time say like, well, I know that this isn't really about my money, but I have this other thing, or I'm sure that I'm so much more of a mess than other people you work with. And I was like, if people had their stuff together, I wouldn't have a business. Like, that's just not how, nobody's like in a really great place about this. It's very rare to me to find someone who's like, I have a question that is strictly about the numbers.
Right. And I think that it's I know with my clients, it's one of the places that, we do a module on money in my program, and
Mm-hmm.
they all want to run and hide, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, we all bury our heads when it
Yeah.
comes to money. We don't want to look at it. We don't want to see the stories that it creates for us. And part of that is internal, but I think part of it is external as well.
Yeah.
What the influences that we have from
Mm-hmm.
all the things around us and the stories around us. And so what's interesting to me is when you look at money and you look at what people are doing with money and the decisions that they're making, there are stories in there. There are patterns. There are things we can narrate about ourselves and our lives just by looking at our financials.
Absolutely. And I think particularly for business owners, and especially for service-based business owners, where a lot of times the thing that we do is very personal to us. It's a skill that we hold very dear. It's something that we are delivering ourselves. We really tie up a lot of our self-worth in the size of our bank account. And we have a really difficult time separating how much we value ourselves as like a human being and as a business owner, separating that from how well we're doing financially in the business or how much profit, and also just a lot of comparison to other people and saying, well, they look like they're doing so well. And I think intellectually we know that that's not always really the case, but it can be very difficult to sort of feel that and let ourselves be that on an everyday basis. So yeah, the default response to dealing with your money is to avoid things, which is why the first thing I make people do is stop avoiding things. And so much of the work that I do is focused on, that's why I love budgeting, is because it is a way of building awareness in the day-to-day moments of staying close with your money and letting it just be a fact of your life and not this thing that you hide from and that feels like it controls so much of who you are, when that's not. That's a story. Like you said, that's a story about it. And sort of all these things come up. And the nice thing about building awareness of our stories is they start to break down as soon as you bring them to the light. Like when you realize like, oh, I know for me, I had a sort of a story about money, that making money has to be hard. And I remember the first time I actually said that out loud, I was like, that's not true. Like as soon as I actually realized that I was thinking that, I was like, I have a competing belief. And as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, that story is just gone for me. But I had to sort of dig it out and bring it up there, and looking at our finances and actually dealing with them and sitting with them and being present with them, being really mindful about what's happening with our money and how we would like to be with that, is a really good way of sort of bubbling those stories to the surface. And then you can do something about them.
Why do we have so much emotion tied up in money?
Capitalism. um, yeah, I mean, I think that's if I were to tie it up in a word, I think there's a lot of societal pressures that we internalize and then we reinforce for each other. And I think there is an idea that when we have a cultural idea, which I think is the whole 20th and 21st century, is this idea that if you work hard, good people work hard and are rewarded for that work. And so the way that we identify the reward for that work is financial. And what we often miss when we look at that, when we look at our bank account and saying, oh, it's not as big, and so therefore I have to work harder, or I need to be better, or I need to be something other than what I am, that really misses a lot of other societal pressures, particularly on women. There are a lot of cultural things, just institutional things that make it different, that can often, I even see this in my own life. I have a daughter who's 3.5 right now, and a couple of days a week, I have to clock out at 3 p.m. because I need to pick her up from preschool. And that changes what I'm able to do. And then I'm, just as a single mom, I'm just doing that until bedtime. I don't have the emotional or, mental capacity to then clock back into work the way that I used to. It's a different sort of thing. So I think we miss a lot of those structural things, but it really comes down to this cultural conversation where we sort of have this idea that if you work hard, you will be rewarded for that in the form of money. And so when we don't have enough money or don't feel like we have enough things that represent money in our lives, it feels like I'm not enough. I have not done enough yet. When I have those things, I will have worked hard enough. And those are just two different things. They are just different things. Working hard and having, material things or enough money in the bank are sometimes related things, but not necessarily.
There's another layer to beyond just capitalism. There are these sort of family stories too in our families of origin, and what we've got brought up believing. So we've got this rush, push, pressure to make more money, but then we've also got these stories from some of our families.
Yeah, these sort of like micro institutions, right?
And you make lots of money, now you're a bad person.
Oh, absolutely. You can't make too much.
Yeah.
You can't make more than everyone that's around you.
But it's very powerful because it's so ingrained, and people will subconsciously do things and limit themselves because
absolutely.
of that fear of success and that fear of being kicked out of your community group or your family of origin because you are considered to be selfish or greedy.
It's almost like you make too much money, you have rejected the way of life that we have in this, large or small community, whether that be your family or whatever the group that you belong to. And, so my bachelor's degree is in sociology. So understanding like group dynamics is super fascinating to me. And I love doing that. But it is this idea of like this, there's a group that you're part of. There's a lot of groups we're part of, but that's so critical to like human development. So doing anything that puts us as the other from our group, including making more money or being comfortable with money or not being afraid of money, is a really obvious and potent way of feeling like a very different kind of person. Because the only way we comfortably talk about money is to talk bad about rich people or to talk about how we don't have any money and we'll never have any money. And isn't it sort of hilarious because otherwise what are you going to do, cry? That's the only acceptable way to talk about money. And also simultaneously wanting so much money and working so hard to get more money. But also, it's not okay if you have any.
So you're actually playing a really important role, right? You are changing the script, you are changing the thinking, and that's the first step to getting to a place where you are comfortable. And not all my clients are like, I want to make tons of money and build this really significant business, right? Some of them are just like, I want to be comfortable.
Yeah, that's where most of my clients are. They're like, I just want to pay all my bills on time every month, have some savings, and just be able to relax a little bit.
Yeah. And so being comfortable with money doesn't mean you have to have some aspirations of being like in your Lambo on the beach with bikini clad women. I mean, this just getting to, and it's really sad that just getting to a place right now where you're comfortable
It's
is,
so difficult.
it's such a struggle.
Yeah.
So what do you do with your clients? I mean, so you've got all these people coming to you and going, I'm ashamed, I feel horrible, I feel crappy about this place that I'm in. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to get through it, and this whole money thing seems just confounding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I often hear people say things too, like, I make good money now, why don't I have any savings? Or I don't know how to make, like, not feel like a jerk about myself while I'm still sort of working on financial goals that are going to take a long time for me to get to. So oftentimes the place where we start is just looking at the actual numbers, because it's a grounding sort of place to begin. We're going to just look at some pieces of information, because the emotional stuff can feel really ethereal and just like overwhelming, and like where do we even begin with it? But we can very clearly begin with, like, let's just put some numbers on paper. What is the balance in your bank account? What is the amount you owe on that credit card? How much money did you make last month? Give some actual numbers so that we can start getting used to the idea of talking about money and looking at money. And really what that is about creating a habit of looking and letting whatever feelings come up, and then creating a safe space to have. I tell people, I was like, I'm an all vibes zone. I am not like a good vibes only kind of person. I don't want to make you feel bad about it. I'm not trying to make you feel good about it. I'm trying to get you to a place where you can just have whatever feelings you're having. So creating a space for that, but that really is about building that awareness and then keeping that awareness high. And then out of that, really naturally some changes start to happen, even if you aren't intentionally being like, I am doing this, blah, blah, blah. We just start to change a little bit of how we feel about things. We start to feel a little bit more comfortable looking into something, or like, now that I can look at my grocery bill, maybe I have some ideas already about how to change that. And obviously I have ideas. I've got things that I've worked on with other clients or have developed on my own that I can say, okay, I see this over here, let's work on that. Or I hear you keep saying these sorts of things, let's kind of dive into that. And for different people, that's going to be different things. I almost always recommend that people have a budget, and it's such a dirty word within the finance. I know a lot of people who even know, like, oh, I don't use the B word with my clients. And I was like, I think we need to demystify the budget. Really all this is a plan that's yours. And I think the problem is a lot of budgets out there feel very prescriptive. They feel very much like somebody else's plan that you then need to fit your life into. And I tell people, it's like, you wouldn't take somebody else's prescription drugs, so don't take somebody else's prescription financial plan. Like, it needs to be your budget. You need to be able to change it when you want to. In a lot of ways, I'm sort of there to be the person who's making sure that you've got the right prescription and that you change it as things happen.
Dr. Money.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
I think what's super interesting to me, and I know that this came out when you and I worked together, was that your budget, but also your spending, is very reflective of your values. And that shouldn't mean that your values need to change. It means that one of the things I think you do really well is that you let people work within their values. Like, I value going out for dinner with my kids because we have these nights, right? Piano night. Yeah. It's late. We want to go out for dinner afterwards.
Yeah.
So rather than saying, oh no, you can't do that, you say, okay, we'll just budget for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I am, people are like, oh, Lynne's going to tell me I can't spend on that. And I was like, well, you obviously don't know me that well. I would never say that. And I was like, I do say that you need to have an awareness of where that fits into your overall plan, and making sure that you are staying within what you have of, like, what the boundaries of this are. But if something is really important to you, then you should absolutely have that in your budget. It just might mean that you need to change something else. But I know, people used to joke around that I was, when I was married, like, my spouse and I shared a car, and, I took the bus to work, and people would be like, oh, Lynne's so cheap. And I was like, I also, have, like, I was like, that same year, I was like, I also paid for like a $10,000 surgery and paid off $20,000 of my student loans this year. So how's that working out for you? I was like, I don't mind taking the bus, actually. It's like I can read on, I can just like read on my phone while I'm being driven to work, and then I can pay off all my student loans. So that actually works out pretty well for me. But it was really about like what's important to you. And in that case, that was just we had different priorities. And so one of the things I love about budgeting is it helps you keep that awareness high so you can get really clear on what is important to you. And when you figure out what's really important to you, by default, everything else is less important than that. So when you identify that thing, you can really put your resources to that, your time, your energy, your money, your attention, and everything else sort of falls by the wayside. So it becomes actually very easy to cut spending in other areas because you realize they're actually not that important to you, because you're supercharging your spending in an area that matters a lot.
And I think it was a huge relief to me when you said, no, put that in your budget. Like, you don't have to cut out all the things that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
But I had no problem cutting out a whole bunch of other stuff, because
exactly
what I really realized is that those are not aligned with my values and the kind of life that I want to lead. And so I think that works. What are you doing differently in this industry? I mean, there are a lot of people who are kind of practitioners of money and money mindset, and profit first and all of these different frameworks. What are you doing differently?
Well, I think one of the things that I do differently is I've been there. I am not coming from the background of having like gone to an Ivy League college and then went and become an accountant or a financial planner and look at people and just say, well, I just can't believe they're spending on that. Like this, avocado toast latte idea. Like I love avocado toast and I get myself lattes all the time. I also there's other things I don't do. So I come from it from a very much a place of having sort of been there and been on both sides of like doing well, not doing as well, sort of teetering back and forth. I also come from a place of like not having an inheritance, like frankly, a lot of people in the financial industry do. I also think I'm much more practical than some people on sort of the other side of the spectrum, which I think mindset is critical. And obviously we're talking a lot about the emotional side of money. And I think that's really, really important. I think some people, when they're talking about mindset and that sort of thing, tend to get so so emotional about it that we don't tie in the practical aspects of things. And I think that works great for some people. It's just not where I come from. So I have both a very practical aspect to it. Like I can help you pick a health insurance plan. And I also am going to, sit with you while you cry. And then we're going to work through that. We're going to sort of do that. And then also we're going to make a tax plan.
My take on mindset is that it really does need to be sort of woven into the fabric of the work that you do, or else it becomes almost too isolated.
It can't just be like a module in a program. Like it has to be a part of every part of the conversation. It has to be how we approach things, how we talk about things, how the words that we use to and about ourselves is really critical. But you do that in sort of in lockstep with doing something.
Yeah, it's the same in my business, right? I would say that 75% of the work that I do with my clients is on mindset, but it's all in the context of what they're doing. So we don't just sit and deal with mindset and look at it and wring our hands and clutch our pearls and go, oh my, it's all part of, okay, so this is your limiting belief about this thing that you're trying to do. Great. We understand that, we are working through it, but what are you going to do next?
Yeah.
Right? How are we going to weave this into your overall plan? And I just think that it's the same with money, that money mindset on its own goes so far, but I think it has to be integrated with the actual work that you're doing. And to me, you're a very practical, very accessible, very approachable version of the financial planner.
Yeah. So I think that's really what it comes down to is like, I both sort of have the practical chops. I have an MBA. I studied accounting. I have spent years as a bookkeeper. Like I know a lot about the nerdy financial stuff and I love that stuff. I love spreadsheets. And I mean, you and I have geeked out about this stuff. Like, I definitely can nerd with the best of them, but I also bring like a really compassionate, it's okay to be vulnerable with me sort of approach, very sincerely non-judgmental. And I think that is a combination that is not, I've realized over the years, it's not a particularly common one. But I think, like we said, with mindset, like I tell people, when we first start working together, I'm like, we're going to do, we're going to go through some practical things. We're going to look at some numbers. You're going to have a breakdown. And then I'm going to give you like a very tiny thing to do. And I was like, the point of that is I want you to see that this thing that has felt so overwhelming and confusing and hard to you, you can do this. And then you're going to do that tiny thing and realize I am doing this. I have already started doing this. And so then everything else from then on is easy. It's maybe more work, but it's easier.
And it's relief, right? My clients go through their financial planning exercise and they're like, why didn't I do this before?
Right. Yeah. I just did a keynote speech last week where it was about retirement planning, but what I talked about was procrastination. Because I was like, what's actually happening here is you know what you need to do and you know that it's important and you can't get yourself to do it. So here's how you get yourself to do things. And really that was about, it was sort of about self-identity but also taking things into tiny little chunks. I sort of told the story about when I was training for a triathlon years ago. And I was totally willing to like fall into traffic and just give up. I was like, I hate everything about this. I had an actual little voice in my head that said to me, you can do anything for 12 minutes. Excuse me. It said, I can do anything for 12 minutes. I bet you didn't know that about me. And it was the weirdest, most profound thing. Because I was like, I am talking to myself in my delirium of like pedaling up a hill. I was like, but I think about that. I was like, okay, what thing am I over? Like really, like how much work is this actually that I'm setting aside? Like how much discomfort? Like when we actually sit down and do the thing we've been dreading doing, it's like a 10-minute thing of discomfort. And you know what? Like, here's the thing. Apparently I can do anything for 12 minutes. So
I love that. Oh, I'm totally going to use that from now on.
Yeah. Sometimes I literally set a timer for 12 minutes. I was like, I'm just going to do this.
It's true. And I'm getting really interested in the whole concept of habits and reading all sorts of things on habits and how we make habits stick. So that's a great one for people who have this kind of initiation anxiety or are tying the completion of a task to something much bigger than what it actually is.
Oh, totally. Well, I even tell my clients, I was like, I don't actually want you to do this right. I want you to go make a mess. I want you to build a habit though. And I was like, I don't care if you ruin this budget. I was like, this isn't the budget that's going to come out of this. I was like, what I want you to do is build a habit right now. And then once that habit is in, we'll change what that looks like.
Okay. We could talk forever about this stuff, but I want to talk a little bit more about your business. So how has that business changed? How has this business changed and morphed as you've grown? You've been in business for a little while now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in some ways it's been, I'm still doing one-on-one work, which is always been the core of what I do. I started out working primarily with business owners because I was trying to be a bookkeeper. I was trying to be a bookkeeper who also sort of coached people on how to use that information. And eventually I realized I, with your help, that I didn't love bookkeeping. I like bookkeeping a lot. And I still have a handful of clients that I do bookkeeping for in my favorite nerdy software that's not meant for bookkeeping. But it started as sort of primarily a bookkeeping thing. And people kept coming to me. They're like, yeah, but could you do just the coaching? I don't actually need a bookkeeper, but I do need someone to explain to me, how do I read this financial report and figure out what it means? Or I need someone to talk to me about my personal finances because I'm a business owner and it's really unpredictable. So it changed in the sense of that. And then so that has sort of morphed a little bit over time. And at this point, I just do the coaching. So that has definitely changed. And how many hours I work has changed. Even probably a year and a half ago, I was working with, I think, like 42 clients one-on-one, which was so much too many. You guys, like 3 times too many people. So as a result, my pricing changed, which helped reduce the number of people I'm working with without actually changing how much money I was making, and freeing me up to devote a lot more attention and care to each of the people that I was working with.
I want to dig a little bit into the decision you made to move away from bookkeeping, because this is a great story in the way a lot of businesses evolve. You know, we start with and move towards the thing that seems most obvious, right?
Yeah, it was like, I'm good at this. People will pay money for it. It's easy to sell.
Yeah. And you labored that decision quite a bit. When what was the final kind of straw that broke the camel's back that made you realize you needed to move away from that business?
I think honestly, what was really difficult is I sort of came to what felt like a turning point where I either needed to, I felt like I had these two sides of my business. I had the bookkeeping side of my business and I had the coaching side of my business, and they were both profitable. Um, but it felt like my bookkeeping business either needed me to give up on it, which I was like, but it's profitable. Why would I? And people, there's demand for it. Why would I do that? Um, or it needed me to put a little bit more, like I needed to develop a team and develop some better systems. And I thought about doing that. And you actually said, well, do you love it? And I realized what lights me up, what gets me energized at 10 o'clock at night if I had a client meeting, is coaching. I like bookkeeping, but I love coaching. And so that's where I decided. I was like, I have this thing. Anyone can be a good bookkeeper. Not everybody is as good as me, but there are other bookkeepers out there. But I think there are not, I can be of greater good to people. And I am so much more fulfilled doing coaching, which is sort of what I was able to identify as, like, quote unquote, the thing that only I can do.
Well, and I think that one of the other sort of relevant pieces of that conversation was that we we assume things are profitable, but when we really dig in, I think what
Mhm.
you found was that the bookkeeping wasn't actually as profitable as you thought.
When I sort of, one of the things that we did as an exercise of sort of profitability by different subset of that part of the business. And that's why, so I had been doing bookkeeping in 3 different software tools, QuickBooks, Zero, and You Need a Budget, which again that's a tool that I use for budgeting with people. It's not one that's typically used for bookkeeping. And when I broke that down, the clients in QuickBooks and Zero were not profitable, or so barely profitable that it wasn't worth scaling that part of the business. So
And I think if you can definitely build a profitable business.
yeah, it can be done. It absolutely can be done. I could have made it, like, I could have tweaked that and made it profitable. And I know we had sort of talked through scenarios of like, well, what if we did this, and what if we changed this here? And I was like, I could see the path um, of that working, but I wasn't excited about it.
Are
So,
you and are you was it the right decision?
oh, absolutely. Like, absolutely, hands down, the best decision that I've made in my business.
Awesome.
Because it made me way more profitable. I got a ton of my time back, and I loved every part of what I did. Like, all of my work now is the work that I love.
So what's your big hope for your clients?
I hope they never need me again. I really hope that when I work with people, they get to a place where they feel really confident and clear that not only do they understand their current financial situation, but as things continue to change, they have a deep-seated comfort and understanding of their own value, that they, and just like an understanding of, like, I feel comfortable enough that I could go research this on my own now, or I would ask those questions and not feel dumb. I want them to feel like as their life changes, they sort of have a general sense of, like, I can do this because I'm not scared anymore. I don't need to avoid this. I can go out and learn more about this and have it not feel like a reflection on me of, like, of my, like, oh, if I need to learn about this, I'm not good enough.
And do you see that shift in confidence? Does that have sort of direct line results within their own financial performance?
Huge. Just like huge. Because what happens is when people feel like it's not gonna work anyway, they get they do things financially that they know are not in their best interest, because they're like, what does it matter? You know, I'm always going to be in debt, or I'm always going to feel like this. And when they have confidence and they start to get these wins where they start to see like, oh, actually making that change felt really good. I felt really proud of myself. I would like to do more of that. I have a client who, when we first started working together, he was so, the only way to describe it is he was so unsure of his own abilities when it came to money. He repeatedly was like, Lynn, I just want you to do this for me. And I was like, I am absolutely not going to do this for you. That is not what we do here. And by the time we finished working together, it's like 6 months later, he had paid off, even in like the difference between our last two meetings, he paid off 5 credit cards and a student loan, like in the span of a couple of weeks.
Wow.
And he's just like I remember I was like, it seems like it's going really well. And, you know, he was like, yeah, you know, I think I'm really getting into it. And his wife leans over and she goes, he is obsessed. He is obsessed, Lynn. There's no other word for it. And he's just like beaming. I mean, he's like paying off credit cards left and right. He's making these big changes. They're like, and he's so proud of himself. It was just like radiating off of him.
Because it's the biggest shame pit of all the businesses, right? It's the biggest shame pit. Part of it is him probably feeling really confident now in his numbers, but part of it is knowing that he actually did it, right?
He did it.
Yeah.
I didn't do that for him.
Yeah.
And he kept being like, well, I couldn't have done it without you. And I was like, but please know, like, I'm not the one who made those changes. I'm not the one who saved that money. I'm not the one who paid those bills off. He didn't make any more money during that time. He was making the same amount of money when we started working together as when we finished. And he paid off like tens of thousands of dollars of debt in the time we worked together.
Amazing. I'm not surprised.
He was actively going into debt when we started working together 6 months before.
Yeah. It's just those little shifts, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it just takes somebody who knows what they're talking about believing in you.
There's your quote right there.
Yeah.
That needs to be on the front page of your website. Okay. So you've had some growth. What has growth meant to you? Like what have you kind of grown around?
You know, I think the biggest thing that I've grown around is when I first started, I was so concerned with growth and so concerned with fast growth and feeling like I didn't know what I was doing. And I spent a lot of money trying to hire out other people to make those decisions for me. Like, you know, coaches and assistants. I was like, I am going to be a real business owner and I am going to do these things. And it was a lot of it, none of them were bad things to do. Like the courses that I bought were good courses. I just wasn't ready to apply them. Or like the people that, you know, the coaches that I hired were good coaches. It's just now like 4 years later that I'm like, remember that thing that she said? That was really good. Now I could use that now. And really what it was is I had this like just insecurity in my own ability to do this, which is really funny given what we literally just talked about. But as a business owner, I was just showing up in a different place. It was the same sort of idea. And getting to a place where I have just sort of a basic feeling of like, this is who I am now. I think a lot of our behavior comes out of who we think we are. And I didn't think of myself as a business owner. And now I do. And when I think of myself as a business owner, I feel comfortable saying no to the course because I know that I know enough about this stuff. It's going to come out again in 6 more months, like, you know, or whatever the thing is, or like, and also just a comfort, like I actually probably know what I need to do. And that what I actually need to do is do something. And I think that the same sort of thing comes up in our money. When we think of ourselves as fundamentally bad with money, we behave like someone who's fundamentally bad with money. And when we get out of that belief system and start recognizing that we are, in fact, just a person who's doing their best, and sometimes what that is going to look like is going to change. But yeah, so I think growth has really meant a lot more comfort with the ups and downs. You know, I wouldn't say that I'm off the sort of roller coaster of business ownership by any means. I've found some ways to make that a little bit easier, but I also just have a lot more comfortable, like this is what this life is. And being a business owner has become a really core part of how I view myself and how I behave in the world. And that's really different. And has allowed me to get more comfortable with like when things are a little bit slow, I don't panic about it the way that I used to, because I've seen this before and I know that it comes back around. And I also do things like I realized I was like, wow, it's really slow right now. And it's also lovely out. And I'm going to take my daughter to the beach for a couple of days and this will come back because that's how this goes.
I need you to just record yourself saying that so I can say it over and over on a reel to all of my
And
clients.
to me,
And do you remember,
when I forget about this in 2 weeks.
a couple of years ago when we first met,
Mm-hmm.
2, 3 years ago,
Yeah, something like that. A
you
billion in online business owner
a billion
years.
a billion internet years, you were not keen to show up. I
Oh my
mean,
God, no. I was terrified. I like spent months just thinking about how to get on a podcast.
my favorite thing that you said to me back then was, well, that sounds a little bit scary, so I guess it's something I should do.
Yeah.
And I think that was
That
like,
was such a like guiding thing for me for a long time, actually. Um, I remember when I was in New York for my first paid speaking gig, and I saw spray painted on the back of a sign, "Follow your nightmares." And I was like, "That's what I'm doing. That's literally." I'm like, "That's why I'm here right now. I'm following my nightmares." I was like, my public speaking career started because I was terrified of public speaking, and so I reached out to the local Women's Business Center, and they now know this. I've told them, but this was like years ago. And I was like, I have this talk that I do. Do you guys want to host it? And they were like, yeah. And I hadn't even written it. Um, and I just did a keynote for them last week.
I,
So
I
absolutely follow my nightmares was like, I feel really fortunate that I was able to sort of like key onto that early enough to be like, this thing is scary, but in a sort of exciting way. And so I'm just going to run towards it, which is how I got into public speaking, which is how I got into being on podcasts and being more visible, which is how I've gotten, interviews in a lot of places. I was the other day, I was like, wow, I'm getting interviewed in places that like fact check now. That's new. I was like, that's kind of a big deal.
I remember, like, I remember when we first started working together, you would shrink when we
Oh
talked.
yeah, I
You
was
you said,
horrified.
well, I don't, maybe, and it was like, you could see your brain just going, what can
Being
I
like, how can I hide right now?
hide right now? And I think it was one of the bravest and most courageous things I've seen someone do. And then all of a sudden you just became this person who speaks, this person who's on, and you're just like, yeah, bitches, I am here and I'm showing up. Like there is no fear. And
Yeah.
how has that helped you?
Well, it's one of those things that's like exposure therapy. It's like the first time that you do something that's scary to you and it's fine. I think the most important thing you can do is find the thing that scares you and do it. And then the second most important thing you can do is when it is fine, because it will be fine, listen to that. Like feel that it is actually fine. And then it becomes so much easier to keep going, to just do it again. And then I think it's also like such a cliche thing, but just like don't try and be the perfect thing. Like I remember my first speaking gig, I was just like, I had all these handouts that no one wanted, but I had spent so much time on, and just like now that's not how I do. I mean, like when I did a keynote, I obviously prepared a lot for that, but when it's just a different sort of thing, and I have just allowed myself that comfort and the time to just get comfortable with that and do it over and over again and do it in ways that feel comfortable so that I can do it in ways that don't feel comfortable. I wouldn't have done a paid speaking gig in New York City if I hadn't done a bunch of local speaking gigs to like 3 women from, that because I made a point of not advertising it. Because I was like, I just have to show up and do the thing. As long as there's one other person there, then I have officially done a speaking gig, and then I will do it, and I will do another one, and I'll do another one, and then just to just get a little uncomfortable, follow your nightmares.
I love it. That's the title of this episode.
Yeah, I love that story too, because it's like such a it was such a perfect thing at that moment. It felt like a plant. I was like, wow, that is like, yeah, that's how you encapsulate this, follow your nightmares.
I love it. I'm gonna get a sign made.
Yeah, I told a friend of mine that story, and she was like, "Can we get T-shirts made?"
Okay. This is a question I ask everybody because it's something near and dear to my heart. But what do you think? And I know you have opinions on this. What do you think the biggest gap is out there between what's real and what we get told in the business world?
Hmm. I think the biggest lie we get told is you don't know what to do.
All right.
And
Tell
I
me.
think I think we know more than we think. I think we can do more now, even if we don't have all the answers. And I think that we just need to start doing something. And I'm saying this to everyone listening as much as I'm saying this to myself, because I am a classic overthinker, and I love just the other day I was trying to pick out a painkiller for my kitchen, and I had like a sample, and I was like, I love this, but I'm going to overthink it for like another 3 weeks. Um, but I think that we are sort of told repeatedly that you need more information, and information is not education. And I think that that is. I also think there are incredible people out there who teach us things that will change our lives forever, and we should find them and follow them and buy everything that they put out. But I think not everybody are those people.
And what's the one thing that has changed your life? What do you wish that you had known before you started?
Hmm. That it was going to work. I think I would, if I someone had said this will work, just start doing it.
And
I would have done it sooner.
and it's going to work in a way that you probably didn't imagine.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, is this business now what you thought you were going to build when you first started?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, no, it's so much better.
Yeah.
Like it's so much better. Just before we got on the phone here, I took a nap.
Well, I'm glad you woke up for our call.
I did. I'm like fighting up a cold, so I was like, I'm gonna take a nap so I can be present for this. But yeah, I mean, like it's so much better than I thought. It's different. It's harder in some ways. It's easier than some ways. Um, it's both making more and less money than I thought at different points of time, and it's just different than I thought. And I think this is really common of everything in our lives, right? We have these plans, and then if I look back any given year in my life, it is never the way that I thought it was going to go. And so I think that that confidence that I have now, like this will work. If I had had that from the beginning, I don't know. I might have been lazier. I might not have been hungry enough to do the things that I did I might not have followed my nightmares quite as hard if I
Yeah,
had known it would work anyway.
we need a little bit of that push, right? That a little bit of
Yeah.
that edge. And I was talking to a client yesterday who was like, I just wish I wasn't always chasing. Like I'm always thinking about, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where do I get my next client? What am I going to, I'm like,
That's a good thing.
it's actually a good thing, right? It's you don't want to always be sitting in lack, but also that kind of keeps our edge, right? It keeps us moving forward. And I think we need a little bit of that discomfort all the time
Yeah.
to be able to, achieve the big things and rush for that next thing, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Even in my confidence that this will work, it works because it works because I keep showing up. It works because I keep going to the things and doing the speaking gigs and talking to people about what I do and finding new clients and doing that. I'm like, that's not always a comfortable thing, even if I do have a baseline comfort that this will continue to work, because I know that I'm good at what I do and it's something people need. But I still have to show up and do the work. And there's always like, yeah. I think I see this actually a lot with people and their budgets, this sort of idea like, well, if I go on a budget, it feels too much scarcity. And it's like, you can have anything, but not everything. Like you have to stay aware of the edges of everything so that you can stay focused on the thing that you're doing. And I think that's the same thing in business. Like if I keep an eye on sort of like, oh, this is how my receivables are, or like this is these are my projections, and this is sort of what I've got coming in, and what is that all going to look like, as long as I don't get too comfortable with the idea that I don't have to do anything. Like as long as I keep showing up and doing the thing, but it's sort of, I have a lot more comfort in what that thing is,
Right.
I guess.
And that'll continue to evolve.
Oh, absolutely. A year from now, I'll listen to this and be like, what was I talking about? That was, everything is different now.
Okay, so what's next for you?
So the next thing I'm working on is I've been threatening for years to start a group coaching program, and I am actively working on that, sort of between doing my one-on-one coaching and being a single mom to a 3-year-old. But I am working on that and sort of nailing down the details of what that looks like. But I should have something coming out this winter that will allow people to sort of get this stuff on their hands in a way that is a little bit more potentially time and financially accessible to people, and doing it in a group. People are always like, people are never going to want to talk about this in a group. And I was like, so much of the value of the work that I do is knowing that other people also work with me and hearing the stories, anonymous stories, but stories of like other people who went through this. Someone else has sort of done this. Normalization, absolutely. Just like seeing like, oh yeah, other people deal with this too. So small group coaching is definitely sort of the next thing for me of taking all of the work that I've done with hundreds of clients over the number of years, and how can I do that in a way that reaches more people. Yeah, that's the next jam. I'm psyched about it. I just really love coaching, and it's going to be like a live coaching program and not necessarily a course. So it's going to be pretty hands-on, and I'm probably going to spend way too much time on it for how much money it will make. And 6 months later, Steph will be like, you have to stop doing this way. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do next.
I think people will eat that up. So what kind of support do you need from this community to get you there?
I think my biggest issue is that I tend to procrastinate a little bit, which is hilarious given that I literally just gave a keynote about procrastination. It's because I know it well. So I would love just sort of, checking in and having people like, so did you do that thing?
All right. We all need to check
in. Did you do
that
thing? And I think, we like your friends that look like they know what they're doing. Just, do that. Did you do the thing that you said you were going to do? Check in is always a helpful thing. Some of the most successful business owners I know are like, I've been talking about starting a podcast for 4 years.
I know. I had been too, and then I just decided I was going to do it.
I know. I think we're similar in that way. Just like, I'm doing this now. This is happening.
Okay. We're running out of time. You and I, as you know, could talk all day, but really I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. You are obviously one of my favorite people, and the service you provide is so needed to all the business owners out there. I know all my clients, this is why you speak to them in my group program, why I'm always sending them to you. People need this, and they need it badly. And I love how approachable you are. I love how you make it so shameless and so easy to move through this. It's life-changing. So can you tell the listeners how they can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at lynnesomerman.com or on Instagram or Facebook at Lynne Somerman. And those are probably the best places to find me, and keep an eye out on my probably social media will be social media. My email list will be the first place that people find out about the group program as that comes out. But happy to connect with people on all of those platforms so that we can sort of help each other out.
That sounds good. Okay. Amazing. Watch out for Lynne's program. It's going to be really good. It's going to be what you need. Thank you so much for joining us today and the gift that you bring to the world.
Oh, thank you. Ditto.
And that's a wrap for this episode. Such an amazing conversation, and make sure you go and check out Lynne and her incredible offers. And thank you for tuning in today to hear this story. The episodes you're listening to are all featuring members of my free private Facebook group called The Real Deal Business Coaching Group, where we have daily prompts to keep you focused on building your business and sharing your everyday challenges, bi-weekly virtual coffee chats, and open coaching and member support from an incredible community. If you'd like to join our community, or if you'd like to be featured on this show, I'd love for you to come and hang out with us in the group. The link's in the show notes, or search up The Real Deal Business Coaching Group in Facebook to find us. And finally, I would love for you to come and join us for our next episode, where we're going to be speaking to Tammy Paltz, who is a life and death coach and works with clients who have had an experience that is bringing up a whole bunch of stuff that is going to help them live a better life. It is so interesting, and I love this lady. So make sure you tune in next time and listen to that episode, because it's going to be hot. All right. Thank you for being here. And if you are enjoying today's content, I would love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on, as this helps us share these stories with an ever bigger audience. Until next time, I'm cheering you on over here, and stay real.